Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here in the sports entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada, on PRConnectionRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. So, earlier in the year here on Vegas Hockey Hub, I did a video titled Predicting the Stanley Cup Playoffs 25% into the season. And I told you on that episode that I will be doing this at the 50% mark at the trade deadline and when the playoffs actually start. So this will be the second version of that video. And for the people who did not get to see the first one, I will explain how this is going to work. In the first part, I'm going to be breaking down the teams who will miss the playoffs and give you a general explanation as to why they will not make the Stanley Cup playoffs. Then we will do the first round in the Eastern Conference and Western Conference, move on to the second round, East and West, two conference finals for East and West, and finally, our Stanley Cup final prediction and who I have winning the Stanley Cup. So let's break this down. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the teams that will miss the Stanley Cup playoffs. And once again, we are predicting the Stanley Cup playoffs here on Vegas Hockey Hub 50% into the season. So we're going to move on to the Pacific Division. We're going to start there. The first off, the Anaheim Ducks. Let's be frank, the Anaheim Ducks, you are in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes. You have been one of the worst teams in all of hockey. You really haven't had much shot really getting into this season to begin with. And with the Anaheim Ducks, Mason McTavish, Trevor Zegras, Troy Terry, you have a good core, a nice foundation, but you don't have much behind it. Struggling veterans. I don't see the Anaheim Ducks being good for another year or two. So yes, you will miss the playoffs and are projected to have the number 2 pick as of this moment. I mean, also in the Pacific, if we're going to put them in here, how about the Edmonton Oilers? Yes, the Edmonton Oilers, a team led by Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, two of the best scorers in hockey, but this is a team that doesn't have much else. This is unlike the Anaheim Ducks, this is a Edmonton Oilers team that lacks a bottom six. An Edmonton Oilers team that Darnell Nurse is your best defenseman and really shouldn't be your best defenseman. You really don't have much on your second or third line in terms of defense for the Edmonton Oilers. And your goaltending situation, you're trying to convince yourself that Jack Campbell is your long-term solution. You signed Stuart Skinner to a long-term deal, secure him for the long-term future, but he just hasn't been the guy either. So the Edmonton Oilers, they will be the first team out, or essentially the 9th seed in the Western Conference, if they do the NFL and MLB route and expand the playoffs. But for now, the Edmonton Oilers, they would be the first team out. They will be not in the playoffs in May. Sticking with the Pacific Division, you also have the Vancouver Canucks. They are going to be doing a fire sale, trading off at the trade deadline. Bo Horvat, for example, Connor Garland, Tyler Myers. There's a good amount of talent that will be gone from the Vancouver Canucks. And lastly, the last team we would have to mention from the Pacific Division would actually be ending up in the Arizona Coyotes. The Arizona Coyotes are competing for the Connor Bedard sweepstakes, similar to the Anaheim Ducks. Arizona has a few pieces on there, but they are not going to be a playoff contender anytime soon. The Chicago Blackhawks, they are not going to be in the playoffs either. Currently have the number 1 odds to getting the number 1 pick. So for the NHL draft lottery, the Chicago Blackhawks, they're going to be part of it. Anaheim Ducks, Arizona Coyotes. So you being in the draft lottery, that signifies you will not be in the playoffs this year. So count them out. I'm also going to say the San Jose Sharks the same way. San Jose has a bright future. Their core is going to be developing in the minors, but they are not a playoff team now. And the last team that I will say that will not make it out of the Western Conference will be the Nashville Predators. Nashville Predators are top heavy. Their defense core is solid on the first line, but then it leaves a lot to be desired underneath it. Juice Soros is a solid goaltender, don't get me wrong, but he is not going to carry you into the playoffs. Now, the St. Louis Blues are also an interesting story because the St. Louis Blues, they have some members left from that 2019 Stanley Cup championship team, but St. Louis really, Jordan Binnington has not been showing well. You also have a situation where injuries have really been affecting that team as well down the bottom line. So I'd say St. Louis, you will be out of the Stanley Cup playoffs as well. So those are the 8 teams in the West that I have not making the playoffs. Just to recap it very quickly, the San Jose Sharks, the Arizona Coyotes, Edmonton Oilers, Vancouver Canucks, Anaheim Ducks, Nashville Predators, St. Louis Blues, and the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, moving on to the Eastern Conference side of it, I'm going to start out with the Montreal Canadiens. This is a Montreal Canadiens team that will have 2 top 10 picks in the first round of the NHL draft coming up. It's also the same Montreal Canadiens team that has had injuries affect them in this year. I mean, they are not terrible as they were last year, but they are not good enough to make the playoffs and make a run like they did in 2020. So Montreal would be out. Same for the Ottawa Senators. I like the potential of Ottawa. I see them having a good future, but they are not going to be a playoff team this year. And same for Philadelphia. Philadelphia is not making the playoffs this year. They had a strong start to the year. The first 10, 15 games looked promising. Now they have fallen off a cliff, and they are not going to be a playoff team in Philadelphia. The Detroit Red Wings, Steve Yzerman, he has a plan. He has a future. Lucas Raymond, Moritz Seider. You have some good talent and some good pieces in Detroit, but you are 1 year away from being a playoff team. Unlike Detroit, you have the Washington Capitals. Now, the Washington Capitals, you have Alex Ovechkin, fantastic, but he cannot carry this team once again. Unlike the past 2 seasons where Alex Ovechkin has literally carried you to a wild card spot, it is not happening this year. It is not going to be a situation where Alex Ovechkin does what he does every single year for the past 15 years, and that's playing in May come playoff time. So Alex Ovechkin, for the second time in his career, will not be playing playoff hockey. Washington will be out. The New York Islanders, they're playing at the UBS Arena out there in Belmont. The New York Islanders have potential with their new coach out there, but the sad reality is the New York Islanders are going to come up a bit short in the Eastern Conference. I'm not saying that they're going to be terrible. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just pointing out a fact, and that is the New York Islanders will be just like the Edmonton Oilers, the first team out in the Eastern Conference. And I also will say that the Pittsburgh Penguins, with Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, Tristan Jarry, the Pittsburgh Penguins, they are on the fringe of being a playoff team this year, but they are going to struggle moving forward. We've seen what injuries have done to their goaltending. We also know that the Pittsburgh Penguins don't have much in their farm system. Go to our farm system rankings video that we did on this channel a while ago. So Pittsburgh, they're going to be coming up just a bit short from being a playoff team. And similar to New York Islanders, similar to the Washington Capitals, this is a situation where they're going to come up just a bit short and they're not going to get the job done for the rest of the year. And then the Columbus Blue Jackets, you are a top 5 pick in the upcoming NHL draft. You settled big on Johnny Gaudreau, and it has not worked out for you. It's going to be fascinating to see how Kent Johnson and the young core eventually comes up in Columbus. But for right now, you are not going to be a playoff team. So to recap the Eastern Conference one more time, the 8 teams not making it in the East will be Montreal Canadiens, Ottawa Senators, Philadelphia Flyers, Detroit Red Wings, Washington Capitals, New York Islanders, Pittsburgh Penguins, and Columbus Blue Jackets. So getting into the first round here, we're going to get into our first matchup, and that is the Boston Bruins, who are the number 1 seed, the best team in the Eastern Conference, and they're going to take on a team who hasn't been in the postseason for 12 years. The Boston Bruins are going to take on the final wildcard team, and that will be the Buffalo Sabres. I mean, this Buffalo Sabres team has been the surprise story of all of hockey. They have gained momentum at the right time, and I actually did a short here on Vegas Hockey Hub about a week ago talking about, can the Buffalo Sabres make the playoffs? I will leave a card right up here if you want to watch that video. But yeah, I talked about in an earlier show about how the Buffalo Sabres could be a final wildcard team, and I genuinely believe that Tage Thompson, Alex Tuck, Jack Quinn, all the good talent that the Buffalo Sabres have, Rasmus Dahlin, Owen Power, and the resurgence of 41-year-old Craig Anderson in net, the Buffalo Sabres will be the final wildcard team, and they will get absolutely demolished by the Boston Bruins. But the fact that they even make it and be the first postseason in nearly 14 years will be a testament to the resurgence of Buffalo. And continuing the Atlantic conversation, we also have the 2 seed and the 3 seed in the Atlantic, and that will be the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning, aka the matchup that Toronto cannot avoid. They took on Tampa Bay last year. It feels like they take on Tampa Bay or Boston every single year they make it to the playoffs. The unfortunate reality of them being in the Atlantic Division is that Toronto is always going to be upscaled and always going to be overshadowed by Tampa Bay and overshadowed by Boston. So despite Toronto having an excellent 2022-2023 NHL season, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the team that won back-to-back cups, a team that has won 3 straight Eastern Conference finals, they are going to be too much for the Toronto Maple Leafs. This is a Tampa Bay Lightning team that has experience. They know how to get there, and they know how to do it. So give me the Tampa Bay Lightning to beat the Toronto Maple Leafs and to match up with the Boston Bruins in the next round, which we're going to talk about shortly. Moving over to the Metro, we have the Carolina Hurricanes taking on the Florida Panthers. Look, Florida, they struggled early in the season, but we're starting to see some form of what they did last year. The Florida Panthers, led by Matthew Tkachuk, you have seen what Alexander Barkov, with that relationship and that pairing, can do out in Florida. The defensive core has been solid, and the goaltending is starting to show a little bit of last year out there in Florida. So Florida will get to the dance, but they will not be advancing past the first round. Carolina Hurricanes, one of the best teams in all of hockey, solid goaltending, excellent defense, and their top 6 is one of the best in all of hockey. So give me the Carolina Hurricanes to beat Florida in the first round. And continuing the Metro here, we have a battle of New York, New Jersey, and that will be the New Jersey Devils taking on the New York Rangers. Now, I will give credit where credit is due. The New York Rangers have turned it around since we did the 25% video. New Jersey Devils have taken a slip in terms of production in the last 2 months. But when it comes to New Jersey and New York, I'm going to be basing it off of who do I trust in net? Who do I trust to stop the puck more, and who has a better defense? And the answer to that question is the New York Rangers. Igor Shesterkin is one of the best goalies in hockey. In fact, if it wasn't for Andrei Vasilevsky, he would be the best goalie in the Eastern Conference. So I will say the New York Rangers will beat New Jersey, and they will move on to the second round, and they will take on the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, moving over to the Western Conference and talking about the Central, the Colorado Avalanche, the defending Stanley Cup champions, they will recover, they will rebound, and they will be the final wildcard team in the Western Conference. They'll take on the best record in the West, and that will be the Winnipeg Jets. Look, I'm going to give credit where credit is due. The Winnipeg Jets have been sneaky, have been silent, but have been deadly in the NHL. The Winnipeg Jets have a solid offense. One of their top 6, by the way, has been incredible. I am very happy to see what Mark Scheifele and that team has been doing. The defense, led by former Golden Knight Nate Schmidt, Josh Morrissey, there is a good pairing there with the Winnipeg Jets. And they have a top 3 goalie in Connor Hellebuck, who has really been carrying this team on his back. So the Colorado Avalanche, unlike last year, will not be moving past the first round. Give me the Winnipeg Jets here to beat the defending, reigning Stanley Cup champion and move on to the next round. And to continue the central conversation, we are going to have a former Minnesota team take on the current Minnesota team. And we're talking about the Dallas Stars, used to be the Minnesota North Stars, taking on the Minnesota Wild. And, before making this video and going over my notes and preparing for this episode, I assumed that Dallas was going to be the easy favorite here. That Dallas was going to be a team that could just steamroll over Minnesota and move on to the next round. But the more I dug and the more I did research on Minnesota, the more I came up with a reason to actually pick Minnesota over Dallas. This is a Minnesota team that the goaltending with Marc-Andre Fleury and Philippe Gustafsson has been solid over the past month. In January and in December, the Minnesota Wild have actually turned it around in terms of defense. As a matter of fact, Matt Dumba has actually been carrying that team defensively. Jared Spurgeon, John Merle, the former Vegas Golden Knight. And I will say on offense, re-signing Matt Boldy was a good move. You have Kirill Kaprizov, who's been fantastic for Minnesota. So give me the Minnesota Wild offensively and defensively over the Dallas Stars. They'll move on to the next round, take on Winnipeg in the second round. But give me the Minnesota Wild over Dallas Stars in this matchup. Now, moving on to the Pacific Division in the first round, we have the Vegas Golden Knights, the number 1 seed in the West, taking on the Calgary Flames. And Vegas has been slipping a bit. I will acknowledge that Vegas has struggled at home at T-Mobile Arena. But the Calgary Flames, it's not like they have been fantastic either. They are going to barely squeeze their way into the Western Conference playoffs. And when it comes to the Stanley Cup playoffs, I don't expect Calgary to do much. I actually expect Calgary to maybe win 1 game in this series. But the Vegas Golden Knights, they will take care of business and move on to the second round. And they will take on who I'm going to talk about next. This matchup about a month ago in December, I assume would have been a landslide between the Kings and the Kraken. I would have assumed that Seattle would have just had their participation trophy and they would have been dust under the rug. But the Seattle Kraken won 8 straight games, won 7 games in a row on the road, and have been an impressive team so far in the 2022-2023 NHL season. And despite this being a close matchup that could go 7 games, I actually give the LA Kings an advantage here because of offense. Kevin Fiala, Alex Iafallo, Adrian Kempe, there is so much talent on the LA Kings roster. I also expect the young core on the bottom 6 to start contributing out there in LA. So their bottom 6 is solid. Their top 6 has been incredible. And their defense, led by Drew Doughty. This will be a team that you're going to have to watch out for in the playoffs. Do not be surprised if the LA Kings have a far good run in the Stanley Cup playoffs, if they go far moving forward. So, give me the LA Kings here to beat the Seattle Kraken and take on your Vegas Golden Knights in round 2. So with the first round out of the way, we're going to move on to the second round here on Vegas Hockey Hub, predicting the Stanley Cup playoffs 50% into the year. And Toronto, you got eliminated. You're done. You're over. For like the 18th year in a row, you're not going to be in the second round. So instead, we're going to get Boston versus Tampa Bay, a series we have seen plenty at this point. And I expect this to be a repeat. I expect it to be a loop. The Tampa Bay Lightning, Andrei Vasilevsky, Victor Hedman, Nikita Kucherov, Steven Stamkos, they will repeat what they've done in the past, and that is beating the Boston Bruins and moving on to the Eastern Conference Finals. The one thing I can expect here is that the Boston Bruins, they will falter when it matters the most. This is a Boston Bruins team led by Jim Montgomery that has a lot of pieces left over from the Bruce Cassidy era. There's also the same Boston Bruins that when it comes to discipline has disappointed them in the past. Also, this is also the same Boston Bruins team that for some reason falls apart on offense when it gets to the playoffs. I don't understand why. I can't put up a reason for it, but offensively, this is a team that struggles to put the puck in the back of the net when it matters the most. So give me the Tampa Bay Lightning here over the Boston Bruins. This will be a rinse and repeat from what's happened in the past. You have the Carolina Hurricanes taking on the New York Rangers. You're going to be seeing a matchup here where Carolina, their young core, their top six has been efficient, whereas the New York Rangers have an excellent top six, but they don't have much behind it. The one advantage I would give Carolina is the fact that they have 3 defensive lines where the New York Rangers have 1.5. The New York Rangers defensively, I just don't know if they're going to be able to hold up and be on par with what Carolina can do. I also see when it comes to offense and when it comes to the power play, I see Carolina being able to do what they need to do to move on to the next round. So give me Carolina here. They will beat the New York Rangers and will move on to the Eastern Conference Finals and take on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, transitioning over to the Western Conference in the second round, we have the Winnipeg Jets taking on the Minnesota Wild here. You have a matchup of Connor Hellebuyck taking on Marc-Andre Fleury. And you also have a situation where you have Winnipeg, which has been mainly based off their defense, taking on the Minnesota Wild that is mostly based on offense. And I am somebody who believes that defense wins championships in hockey. I do. I truly believe that whoever has the better defense and has better goaltending will advance when it matters the most. So because of that logic, give me the Winnipeg Jets here. Give me Connor Hellebuyck, and I expect them to make the Western Conference Finals by beating the Minnesota Wild. And in this matchup here, we have your Vegas Golden Knights. We are here in the sports entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. And they will be taking on their LA counterpart in the LA Kings. So if you would have asked me in early December, late November, this would have been a no-brainer, no shocker, 100%er that the Vegas Golden Knights would beat LA. That the LA Kings did not have enough to beat Vegas and move on to the Stanley Cup, eventually move on to the Western Conference Finals. But a lot can change in 90 days. A lot can change in 1 month's time. The Vegas Golden Knights defensively have looked lost since having all those injuries. The Vegas Golden Knights look like a lost puppy when they're playing at home at T-Mobile Arena. Maybe the Vegas flu is affecting them this time instead of affecting the opponents. And I also want to point out that the Vegas Golden Knights, Chandler Stevenson's been incredible. Jack Eichel, when he is on the ice and he's performing, has been excellent. But the problem with the Vegas Golden Knights has actually been consistent goal scoring from their bottom six. It has been, can anybody score from Vegas outside of 3 players? That has actually been a problem they've been having for the last 5 or 6 games now, is that the same 2 or 3 players are scoring for Vegas. And with Shea Theodore being injured, with them having a situation where Mark Stone is out with upper body injury, I just don't know if Vegas, if the injuries keep accumulating, if they will be able to make it to a Western Conference final. I do not know if the Vegas Golden Knights have enough on defense to protect Logan Thompson if he makes a rookie mistake. Because I've noticed a pattern with Logan Thompson, is that when you have people surrounding him, when you got people near the net, Logan Thompson most of the time is fine. But when you don't have people backing him and don't have people protecting him, his weaknesses start to get exposed and his rookie mistakes start to be alarming. So for the Vegas Golden Knights, if they get their defense back, if Shea Theodore, Daniil Myromanov, if Zach Whitecloud, Mark Stone, if Vegas can get some players back heading into the playoffs, I will retract what I'm about to say next. But until then, until they can fix those problems, give me the LA Kings here to beat the Vegas Golden Knights and advance to the Western Conference Finals. Now, the Eastern Conference Finals, we have the Carolina Hurricanes and the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I've said this multiple times on this show, and I will say it right now. I believe that defense wins championships. That who you have in net matters. Who you have in front of your goalie matters. And there is no team that has been able to show a better defense in the Stanley Cup playoffs than the Tampa Bay Lightning. Andrei Vasilevskiy has been the best goalie over the last 5 years. Andrei Vasilevskiy has been a brick wall in net. You know, like that meme from a few years ago, is Pekka Rinne too good right now? Well, I'm going to say on record, Andrei Vasilevskiy has been that good in the Stanley Cup playoffs the last 3 years. So give me the Tampa Bay Lightning. They will beat the Carolina Hurricanes in a grueling 7-game series, and they will move on to their 4th Stanley Cup final in a row. And moving over to the Western Conference Finals, we have the LA Kings taking on the Winnipeg Jets. And this should be a great battle. Should be a fantastic 7-game series. But I trust Connor Hellebuck. I trust Josh Morrissey. I trust former Golden Knight Nate Schmidt. This is a Winnipeg Jets team that's been built on defense. Defense, defense, defense. And understanding that Jonathan Quick, this will probably be the last run he has when it comes to him being a starting goalie for your Los Angeles Kings. So with that being said, give me the Winnipeg Jets here. I expect them to beat the LA Kings and move on to the Stanley Cup Finals. And the last matchup, the Stanley Cup Finals, you're going to have from the Central Division and the Western Conference, the Winnipeg Jets. And from the Eastern Conference and from the Atlantic Division, we have the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, the question you could be asking yourself here is, which one is going to prevail? Is it going to be a team that has not reached the Stanley Cup Final since coming back to the NHL in 2011? I mean, heck, if you even want to include the Atlanta Thrashers on that list, a team that has never been to a Stanley Cup since 1999. Or will a team that will have made its 4th Stanley Cup final in a row, will they win 3 out of 4? Will they continue a dynasty? Or is this going to be a dawn of a new era, and will Winnipeg win its first? Well, the answer to that question is going to be the fact that the Winnipeg Jets, led by Connor Hellebuck, will win the Stanley Cup final. That Mark Scheifele and that organization in Winnipeg will get the job done. The defense will hold, and they will beat the Tampa Bay Lightning in 6 games. And the Western Conference, for the 2nd year in a row, will beat Tampa Bay and win Lord Stanley Cup. So let me know in the comments, let me know in the chat down below who you have as your Stanley Cup winner. Also, while you're here, check out all the other shows on prconnectionsradio.com, the voice of new media. And until then, this is Vegas Hockey Hub. We are live Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. And until then, continue watching hockey. Go support junior hockey. Go Knights, go, and have a good one.